Mr. Fiddler's story began in the year 1925, when he came into the world unannounced, but he wouldn't stay silent for long. In the Ping Jockey podcast, he shared stories of the hardships and familial sacrifices of his childhood, tales that truly depict the economic deprivation caused by the Great Depression, but at the same time illustrate the hope and imagination of a youth raised during meager times. We saw Mr. Fiddler grow up quickly, as he took paper routes and sold lemonade to provide for his family. Yet the true catalyst for his fast-paced entry into adulthood was the draft notice he received 3 days after his 18th birthday to serve in World War II. He was given the choice to stay and complete his classes or depart immediately. Ken chose to enlist right away, knowing that he would receive his diploma regardless. Our listeners know how he courageously left home and went aboard the USS Loy DE-160 as a sonarman 3rd class to fight the growing threat across the Atlantic and in the Pacific. During his service, he crossed the Atlantic 12 times. He saw the Loy converted to an APD and then sailed to the Pacific, where he participated in the invasion of Okinawa and even survived a kamikaze attack. Through Mr. Fiddler's eyes, we see the patriotism and valor of the 1940s and understand how he and his contemporaries were given the name the Greatest Generation. When Mr. Fiddler was summoned again to fight in the Korean conflict, he did not shy away from duty. He left his young bride and sailed off to serve his country yet again. In my eyes, he is the definition of bravery, of selflessness, of a true hero. My name is Marley, the co-host of the podcast, sitting here with the Ping Jockey himself, Mr. Kenneth H. Fiddler. Last week, we left off with the announcement to the entire Atlantic Fleet that Mr. Fiddler's daughter, Mary Beth, had been born. Mr. Fiddler, what happened when you finally got home?
Well, it wasn't long until 30 days leave was over, and I had to go back to the ship. That part was hard, but you had to remember that half of the crew did get their leave and were anxiously waiting for us to return to the ship so that they could go home. And when Ducky and I returned, decided to go back and forth to visit after the 30 days, I took my car along and we drove down to the ferry where we had to go to Norfolk where the ship was. We kept doing that every weekend. And one weekend, as we were leaving, Betty's mother gave us a bag of fruit to take along to eat on the way back. We did eat some of it, but we had some left when we arrived at the ferry. We just had time to park the car and run to catch the ferry. And of course, we forgot to take the bag of fruit with us.
Ooh, what happened next?
It was hot that week, and when we arrived back at the car, the following Friday to start back to Chester, wow! I opened the car door, and there must have been a million fruit flies in there, as well as a bag of rotten fruit on the front seat. We threw out the fruit and started home to Chester, fruit flies and all. We put the windows down, and as long as we were moving, the flies were in the back seat. But every time I had to stop at a traffic light, they swarmed around our heads. By the time we arrived in Chester, we still had at least half of the flies with us.
Oof. So you were still working on the ship during this time?
Yeah.
So, what happened in October?
Well, at the end of 3 months, Mary Beth was getting big enough to travel. I found a small apartment with kitchen privileges in Portsmouth, Virginia, which was just across the river from Norfolk. Betty and Mary Beth came down to live in the apartment, so I didn't have to make the trip every weekend, and we could be together a lot more. I did a lot of switching watches and duty days with other fellows so that I could stand most of my watches during the day and then go home to the apartment overnight. The landlady we had was very nice. Betty and Mary Beth came to Portsmouth in August and stayed a month. One weekend, the three of us went to Virginia Beach. We took a picture of Mary Beth, who was about 3 months old, sitting by the ocean. Soon afterwards, it was time for the ship dinner dance.
And were you going to be on shore patrol for that?
Yeah, almost everyone planned on attending the event, held in a big hall downtown. The only ones who couldn't go were those who had the duty and had to stay aboard ship all night. Naturally, I was one of those fellows. However, I discovered that if I volunteered to be a shore patrol at the dance, I could go home to our apartment after the dance was over. So that is what I did. In the beginning, all we had to do was be there and see that everything went all right. But later in the evening, after everyone had been drinking, things got a little rowdy.
Oh boy, what happened?
Some fellas tried to dance with other fellas' wives, and pretty soon, one fight after another broke out. It didn't take long before we had a riot on our hands. We couldn't handle it, and shore patrol and military police from all over showed up with paddy wagons. They took the worst ones down to headquarters and put them in the brig.
And what's the brig for people that don't know?
That's like a jail. It is a jail.
It is the jail. It's on the ship, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so bad that word was sent out to pick up any sailors from the Lynn. It so happened that not everyone had gone to the dance. Some fellas just went to the movies or maybe a bar. And when you know it, some of them coming out of a bar or a movie were walking down the street, minding their own business, and were stopped by some shore patrol and were asked what ship they were on. And when they said from the USS Lynn, they were hauled off to the brig. I understand that some of them put up a pretty good fight, too. They didn't go peacefully.
Well, I don't blame him to be wrongfully thrown into the brig. Oh, man, what a... So did you stay in Norfolk, or did you go somewhere else from Portsmouth?
Yeah, soon after that, we left for Cuba in early November. And it was sort of a shakedown cruise to check out everything we had worked on in the yard. We went to our big naval base in Panama, Guantanamo Bay. There we did a lot of gun firing at sleeves being towed by aircraft, and all the sonarmen went to a lot of time ashore at the attack teachers, which was a school for sonarmen where we simulated attacks on submarines. This is why they were called attack teachers. After several weeks of training at sea, making practice runs on real American submarines, we came at the end of November, and we didn't have liberty off the base, but we were able to spend time at the enlisted men's club, where we often sat drinking rum and Coca-Cola.
Ooh, Ooh, that's not too bad.
And soon after that, Ducky, Mona, and I, and a few others, found out we were getting sent home for discharge.
Finally,
Yeah. We received orders to pack, and we were taken to the Naval Air Station where we were loaded on a military air transport plane. It was loaded with a lot of boxes in the middle of the floor, and the passengers sitting down both sides of the plane, facing in forward into the boxes, just like the plane we flew into Japan. We soon took off, and we were told that we should be discharged at the naval base in Jacksonville, Florida. We leveled off at 10,000 feet when all of a sudden we saw oil shooting out of one of the engines. Soon the pilot announced that we were turning around and would try to land. We landed safely, and we were unloaded and put up in 2 barracks overnight while they worked on the engine. Early the next morning, they unloaded everything that was packed on the plane and then took the plane up to try a run. I guess they figured everything was all right because when it landed, they loaded everything back on, and then they put us back on. We took off again, and everything went all right, and we had an uneventful trip to Jacksonville. Only some of us got off of the plane when we arrived in Jacksonville, and the plane went on to Norfolk. We were later told the plane crashed while landing in Norfolk. We never found out how bad it was, though.
Wow, how lucky you've been on those plane rides when things have gone wrong. You narrowly escaped.
It's coming off from the USS Lloyd.
Yeah, the lucky Lloyd. So you guys were processed in Jacksonville, and you got a little cash to get home, and went back to Betty and Mary Beth in Chester, right?
Yeah, Ducky and I were processed at the Jacksonville Naval Base and discharged on December 1st, 1951. We were given money for transportation home, and so far as I can remember, we went home by train.
So you were discharged in December of 51?
Yep.
And you were enlisted on April 6th of 1943, correct?
Yeah, but I was discharged from World War II, I think December 7th.
Yeah.
45.
Just around the same time.
And now this was December 1st.
1951. Whew. What a decade. That must have been hell on your nerves. Well, it was an end of an era. Your time in the service was finally over after almost a decade serving your country. I have to say thank you yet again for your sacrifices that you made for our country. This is Marley and the Ping Jockeys signing off.
Bye-bye.